Hello and welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for a new episode of Anewgo of New Home Sales. I'm your host, Anya Chrisanthon, and joining me today is an AI expert, Ilan Buckman. Ilan is the founder of RTB AI, and today, of course, we're going to talk about AI. So Ilan, welcome to the show. So good to have you here. And before we get things going, I would love to hear your background, your story, who you are, and how did you get interested in AI and why AI?
Absolutely. It's great to be here, and I've listened to the podcast and really enjoy it. So I'm excited to have the conversation. But yes, so I founded a firm called RTB AI. RTB stands for Raise the Bar, because I believe that generative AI or Gen AI has the opportunity to raise the bar in terms of how we conduct business. And particularly in a couple industries, construction being one of them. But I've spent my whole career at the intersection of business and technology. And when generative AI became mainstream about a year and a half ago at this point, with ChatGPT being released to the general public, it really opened my eyes. And I realized that there was a big opportunity here and a lot for folks, including myself, to learn about how we use this for business. And so I've been working with various different clients, helping them infuse AI and seeing some great results and having a lot of fun doing it.
Very cool. So you recently just got back from the International Builder Show. And so why did you choose construction industry as one of your focus points for AI? Because it seems counterintuitive, because construction industry has typically been on the other end of innovation when it comes to technology.
Absolutely. And I agree, it seems like that on the surface. But first of all, construction is just one of the backbone industries of America, right? It's not going anywhere. And that's one reason that it's an area of focus for me. But particularly on the AI front, when you really think about construction, you are taking a lot of information, usually in a builder's head or a group of builders, and applying it to a physical scenario. And generative AI is great at capturing information and applying it in different scenarios and applying it in scenarios that make sense for the application. To give you an example, let's say a home builder wants to build a certain type of home with a certain square footage and a certain aesthetic. That information needs to be almost translated into a scope of work with all the different steps and trades that need to be involved. And that needs to be translated into hours, which may need to be translated into price. And you're constantly manipulating data. And generative AI is actually excellent at doing that. And that's just on the data front, not even getting into the whole visualization area where it lets you kind of imagine something doesn't exist just yet.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think there's definitely a lot of opportunities on home building front. We are, I want to say 2 million homes off the top of my head short of what we need to have in order to provide affordable housing or housing for everybody in this country. So I know that we're certainly as an industry on the mission to fill that gap. And I do agree with you that in the next 5 to 10 years, AI is going to go even more mainstream. Because I don't know if I necessarily agree with you that it's mainstream yet, as you said. I think there's a fraction of people who are experimenting with it and playing with it. And at IBS, I definitely felt like there was a little bit of more excitement and people were curious to learn more about AI, but I don't know if I would call it mainstream, but I think it's gonna go mainstream. And I absolutely agree. There's so much opportunity in home building to streamline the process, make it easier. And as you mentioned, especially with the visualization aspect of it, like Anewgo has been using AI, our own version of AI for our exterior visualizations, for example. Like we don't have a bunch of people working overseas creating those interactive visualizations. It's all created on demand using our interactive engine. So if home builders are looking to incorporate AI into their process, like where should they even begin? And what are some of the common obstacles that you see home builders run into it when they start to think about it?
Absolutely. So first thing I recommend to just about anybody is just to give it a try, right? Sign up for a ChatGPT account, play around with Google's Gemini. I personally also recommend that you come to that tool with a purpose in mind, right? If you're working on a task, maybe give yourself an extra 15 minutes and say, hey, I'm going to see what AI has to say about this kind of thing. That is the very first starting point. And as you tinker, then the gears really start going. So the other thing I encourage folks to do also is think about AI not just as a sort of writing tool, right? A lot of people have seen examples of write this email or summarize this article, and that's great. But the other thing that I think is more impactful, especially in a business and a construction environment, is really data manipulation. So if you find yourself working in a spreadsheet, you're copying and pasting things, moving different things around, give that information, dump it into a ChatGPT window and see what it can do with it. And then think about if you had even mild success in that case. Let's say you are building an estimate, right? Then think about how many other times this month am I going to conduct a similar task? And it's possible that what you just maybe spent an hour doing could actually be automated by, as soon as I get these 3 inputs from these sources, that this same process could be run automatically. And so those are some of the things that I help folks with. And those are a little bit more complicated. But the bottom line is, it is that at this point, most computer-based tasks can be assisted by using Gen AI. And if you can't think of applications yourself, because I actually think that's the hard part, is finding those applications. There are actually very few barriers to entry to using Gen AI. So the nice thing about Gen AI is you're speaking in your own natural language. No one else is looking at your writing, right? So if, for example, if English isn't your first language, you can use whatever language you're used to using, or if writing on a computer is not all that comfortable for you, no one's going to read this, right? And the AI is smart enough to overcome any spelling mistakes or things like that, right? So I really encourage people to just give it a shot and then take a minute to reflect on how that was and what was AI good at, what was it not good at, those kinds of things.
And now you don't even have to write it, because today, I think today, or maybe yesterday, ChatGPT just came out with the spoken version on the desktop, which is awesome because I have their app on my phone specifically for that reason. Because when you're driving or even just cooking or whatever, if you want to ask it a quick question, and I find myself using that feature all the time with my kids in the car. They'll be like, oh, no, we saw this on YouTube. And they're always telling me about my 12-year-olds. They watch, the shorts on YouTube, a bunch of nonsense, and they always throw some stats at me. And I'm like, let's check that. So it makes it so easy. You just press the button, you speak into it. So now you can do the same exact thing on your desktop, which is lifesaver. And again, it just streamlines the whole process. It allows you to talk to it just like you would to a consultant in a way. So I absolutely love that idea. And then, for me personally, I agree with you with just play with it, see what you can do to streamline the process, to shorten the amount of time that it takes you to accomplish certain things. Like for me, for example, it used to take me a full day between editing the podcast, writing, coming up with the description, coming up with the title for the episode, a full day. It's a waste of time. And now it takes me a fraction of the time, because as soon as I record the episode, I put it into my AI editor. It takes all the filler words out for me. It cleans it up for me in a fraction of the time. And then I take that transcript, I pop it into Claude AI. I prefer it much over ChatGPT. So everybody has their own thing. And it comes up with the title and the description for me in like that. And it's usually way better than anything that I would personally dream up of. Make sure that you are playing with it and using it. It's definitely a great tool. And Ilan, can you give us some specific examples of any companies that you worked with in the construction industry that you helped implement AI, and like any specific use cases for that?
Yeah, and I think that really helps bring it to life. And I'll love to share a couple of examples. One other thing you just reminded me of. So I love the voice to text feature. And it's not just that you say it and it writes it down. It's actually going to speak back to you in an extremely fluent and natural way. But Here's the other thing about this is very important, I think, for the construction industry. Folks who work in construction spend a lot of time in their cars, out in the field, and usually it's dead time, right? And we know that using your phone while you're driving is not a great idea. And so if you're being safe, you just have a bunch of dead time. But think about this, and here's just another way that folks could use it. Everyone's got their preferred. I love using ChatGPT, but I also experiment with the others. But ChatGPT has a mobile app where you can speak in natural language back and forth with your virtual assistant. So imagine let's say I'm a concrete company and I just visited a site and I have fresh in my mind what needs to be done for this project. I can talk back and forth to ChatGPT and explain what I saw, maybe ask it a question about maybe it needs to calculate some PSIs or something for what I needed for this project. I can give it some dimensions. It can do some calculations for me. And by the time I'm at my next site, I can even ask it a scope of work or calculate output and this, I know this is getting a little bit technical, but I want to make sure there's tangible things for people to do. Output in a CSV, which is a spreadsheet type format, an estimate of the cost and quantities of what I need to do here. And the nice thing about that is it's going to be saved so that then when I sit down later that night at my computer, it's all right there, and I can turn that into something that I can just send off. Because construction professionals, they're in their cars, you're exhausted at the end of the day, and then all of a sudden, then the work begins, right? Now you're doing your back office work, right? And that's exhausting. And so my hope is that we can take advantage and turn some of this dead time into productive time a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's such an on the go, and most contractors are just terrible at getting back to customers because they go literally from job site to job site, and then that follow up gets left behind. But to your example, that's genius, and you can literally generate that on the fly and then attach it and send it out. How great of a follow up is that? That will make you stand out from the competition for sure.
Totally. Yeah. And so other ways that I've helped clients in this industry. So one is most construction professionals that I've spoken with, they have their own unique methodology of how they scope and price projects. And really that's their secret sauce. And what I've helped do is turn that into an AI-based model. And it used to be the case, and some contractors have done this, have invested a lot of time, energy, and money into building out extensive databases with all their line items and their prices based on the vendors they like to use, et cetera. You can actually replicate that into creating your own little AI model that's going to scope and estimate projects the way that you like to do it. And so I've helped companies build that capability out, and it's let them shed those old archaic models, which by the way end up costing a lot of money to maintain. A lot of people are maintaining them on their local servers or in the cloud. All of that's expensive, right? So we've been able to reduce the cost for maintaining their own proprietary models, and these models are a lot more flexible. So let's say, for example, if you're used to doing, I don't know, only interior remodels, and now you want to get into doing exterior also, it's so much easier to add on to that secret sauce of yours and apply some of that secret sauce going on in the exterior and start building out those line items versus if you did it in a database format. That was one way. Another one was interesting. I worked with a home services company that basically had a network of handymen that would be dispatched to subscribers' homes to take care of things that you needed at home. And one of their issues was that they would send a handyman out to finish 3 tasks, but the handyman wasn't able to complete them because they would run out of time. And the reason for that was because no 3 tasks are alike, right? So this company only let you put in 3 tasks that would be completed during a 2-hour visit. Some folks have put in 3 simple tasks, and other folks 3 extremely complicated tasks that there's no way would be completed in that amount of time. So what we built, and this maybe gives a sense of what you can actually build with AI, is connecting this company's database with every task that a user puts in, and they put that in their own natural language and converts it to a number of minutes that AI can now estimate how long that'll take. And then you can see, oh, wait a minute, this appointment is going to be 300 minutes long. And so there's no way it's going to be completed. And then the company's able to intervene and figure out solutions to those kinds of problems. So that was an extremely impactful project. The AI model was actually able to predict with 85% certainty when a appointment was not able to be completed. And so the combination, that's a great example of combining your own proprietary data that you have with some kind of automation, right? So every time a task gets added, AI jumps into action. And the power of these AI models is enabling much better customer service and also better efficiency. So you're not sending the same worker out to the same site multiple days in a row.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I'm sure that you can adjust cost accordingly, how long it's going to take and all of that good stuff. Yeah, that's a great example. And during the pre-call with our CEO, you talked about your father-in-law, who is the builder. And sounds like you've had a little bit of an experience on the construction side in your earlier years yourself. So would you say that experience has influenced the way you consult your clients on AI now?
Yeah, 100%. I think in two ways, having this personal experience with a small business owner. Yeah, so my father-in-law is an immigrant, came to this country with not very much and built himself a successful construction company. And so I think it's done a few things. One is having that personal experience really has shown me an appreciation for hard work and the American dream, right? And a level of respect that I think most people in this country may not have for trades work or skilled work like that. And the second thing is really part of the first is the complexity behind it, right? This is not just going out and, carrying lumber from one side to the other. This is highly complex work, just as complex as when I was earlier in my career in a big management consulting firm, consulting for large Fortune 500 companies, right? It's just as complex, if not more complex, and you're doing it with fewer resources, right? So it's extremely complex. And then the second thing that has also really influenced the way I consult is what we talked about before with folks being in their car. Construction folks are constantly juggling multiple things at once. And we need to, when we think about technology, and I think honestly, this is a big miss in the technology industry and part of the reason that fields like construction have been later to adopt. I don't think it's so much because folks don't want to adopt. I think it's maybe has more to do with that technology hasn't really met their needs where they're at. And so when I think about building things for my clients, it's got to be as easy to use as possible. And so ideally, it's not another app that people need to download. Maybe it's not even another URL that they need to have. Like my default, actually, my preference is I love building things through SMS, right? You may have folks out in the field who aren't using smartphones. And the nice thing is that's okay. You can actually interact if you build it the right way. You can interact with a large language model all through SMS and it can go back and forth with you. And so the easier to use it, the more accessible and the more you can use it on the go. I think voice is another example of the way to do that. That's really key. So I think just like the general respect for the hustle, but also the complexity that folks in this industry deal with is one. And then the way to service this industry is the other personal learning that I've gotten both from my father-in-law and then also the last company I worked at was a construction tech company. And I was overseeing our builder network, which was over 100 different residential builders. And I got a great opportunity to interact with them and learn about all their businesses. And it really validated what I saw. It wasn't just that my father-in-law was a one case. It was really multiple cases, a lot of great stories of people who were dealing with the same things.
Yeah. And I hate that we always say, but the construction industry is different, but it really is. So same thing with advertising. A lot of times as, as somebody in charge of our marketing, I always get pitched outside agencies for, oh, we can do this for you, we can do this for you, but they've had zero experience in real estate. And it's not as easy. You don't get it. And it truly does take somebody who's been in it to understand all the ins and outs. And like you said, even as simple as all the time in between, that it has to be mobile friendly, that you have to be able to talk to it. That totally makes sense. You mentioned that you provide several different services like consulting, training, and recruiting. So can you expand on that a little bit? Give us some more idea of what you do with your clients. So if somebody's interested in reaching out to you.
Yeah. One of the learnings I had when I jumped into this field was there is well, first of all, AI and Gen AI is actually not that new. Folks have been working on this problem for many years. And particularly over the last 10 years, there have been billions of dollars of investment from big tech companies and research institutions going into this. And it's mostly been behind the scenes, and it's been limited to a small number of researchers and very high level data scientists. What has changed in the last year or two is that now it's accessible to all of us. And while it's true many or most construction professionals have not tinkered around too much with these tools, it's out there for them to do. And that wasn't the case just a few years ago. And so to me, there's this big gap, and this is not just unique to construction at all. This is even in my network of tech companies, I hear the same thing. There's this big gap between how powerful the technology is and then the people side of it, both from a strategy perspective of what should I even be using this for, down to the how and the skills, like how do I do this and how do I do this? And so my goal is to fill that gap. And there's different ways to do it. One is to come in and help companies on a consulting basis and really advise them. But I'm more of this is probably just a personality thing. I'm more of a doer, right? So I'll spend 20% of my time advising on strategy and 80% actually building tools, sitting next to you and figuring stuff out together. So that's on the consulting front. Another piece of it, which is really, I believe there is a new crop of talent that is being cultivated right now. And these are folks who are in traditional companies. These are not brand new roles. This is my personal opinion. I could be wrong. I don't think there's going to be whole departments of AI people within every company. What I do think is that employees in roles that have existed for a long time, like construction, are going to be using AI to make them more efficient and more productive. And so my goal is to help train employees on how to do that. And in some cases, help companies recruit folks who can come in and either do that or also be change agents within a company. And so I really enjoy working with my clients, learning about their businesses and applying custom solutions to their needs, whether it be in a consulting basis, training, or finding them their next rockstar employee.
Love that. It's so important. So you're not just making them dependent on you, but you are giving them that solution to take it in-house and continue that journey on their own. I love that. So Ilan, looking ahead, where do you see AI really making a breakthrough for the next few years, and specifically for housing industry? So what should we be paying attention to?
Yeah, I think there's two big areas, and one is the whole visualization piece, which I actually deal with less. And I know that Anewgo has some cool tools, and I think that is really transformative. The area that I focus on a bit more is the efficiency and customer journey piece of it. And so what I mean by that is I think each employee who uses AI, or business owner for that matter, is going to become 1.5, 2, 3 times more productive than the same person who doesn't use it. And that's one. I think then when you combine automation with AI, that is really like the next level unlock. So what I recommend to people is learn it, use it yourself. Next level is then if you can then automate different tasks with AI, that's when you really start to unlock those efficiency gains. And that's typically what I'm helping my clients do. The other thing, one of the reasons that I'm really passionate about, particularly the mid-market businesses, small and medium business owners, is I think that generative AI is a force multiplier for their businesses. And what I mean by that is with the same number of employees, you can just do so much more. And so this isn't about automating and cutting jobs and things like that. It's doing more with the same amount of people. And one way that I like to think about it is I spent a good amount of time in the corporate world. And the way the corporate world deals with this is often in what's called a shared services model, right? So they'll have teams, internal teams of experts, right? Legal, compliance, marketing, etc. And that's just something. And when anybody in that big company has a compliance question, they go to that department. That's not something that a small or even medium-sized business can do. But that changes with AI because now you have the opportunity, if you have a specific question in a certain area, even permitting and building codes is a relevant one, where you can take AI as a big knowledge base of all this information, and you can supplement that also with, there's lots of publicly available information that you can feed into AI and ask it to parse through. And all of a sudden, businesses that are thinking about it in this way have their own version of a shared services model. And I think the future of this is really a collaboration between AI and people. I think you're still going to need legal experts and all these kinds of things. But do you really need a lawyer to draft that first version of the contract? I'm not sure. Do I think that you should have a lawyer look over it before you ink it? Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. Here at Anewgo, we've always been like a lean machine. Most of our employees are developers, so they're really smart guys, and we all wear so many different hats. And again, from just experiencing AI on my own in my everyday role, I can definitely say that I've been way more productive, and it helps me juggle my responsibilities better and not get burned out. So for sure, and a lot of companies are starting to cut back on a lot of costs. We've certainly had a rough couple of years. Hopefully now interest rates are starting to come down and we'll see some brighter future ahead. But yeah, I think the trend overall is going to be not hire more and more people. It's going to be hire people with the right skills who are using these technologies so that you can really make yourself way more marketable. So speaking about that, what do you say to companies who say, AI, oh my God, stop talking about it. It's so annoying. Nobody really knows about AI. And what is this? What is the internet, right? What is the internet equivalent? Do you think that this whole thing is being overblown? What do you say to people who are really talking negatively about it or being skeptics? And is it okay to be skeptic right now about AI?
Look, I think, yes, it's okay to be skeptical and it's healthy to be skeptical, right? And there's a few thoughts I'll share. One is, especially for the skeptics, but really for everyone, I think it's very useful to understand a little bit about how AI works. One thing I to say a lot is Gen AI is magical, but it's not magic. There is a structure to it. This is a highly sophisticated statistical model, right? It doesn't have feelings. This
Not
sounds
yet.
silly, but not yet. But and I think we're far away from that. And there is so much talk and buzz about it that you end up getting some pretty wild and alarming takes on it. And I like to focus on the practical. Understand how it works. Understand that behind every entry there's rankings and weights, and these are generated by numbers. And for me, at least, and maybe this is just the way I think, but that gives me a little bit more comfort. And I think also it helps people learn how to use it better. So, one is I would learn how it works, and it's important to demystify this technology a little bit. I also think a healthy level of skepticism is okay. And I do think that there are companies who are riding the wave and implementing features that are flashy with AI. And I'm a sucker for those too, right? It's fun when I see something that's going to do something kind of magical. But what I'm really focused on and what I think has real value and what's going to last here is those things that are transforming the way that you complete different tasks. If you can do a task faster, or one thing I helped a client with, they were spending hours on evaluating properties to acquire, creating a pro forma P&L and doing all kinds of forecasting. And if you can do that, and instead of evaluating 3 properties a week, you can evaluate 20 because now you're using AI to do it for you and give you a a quick output. These are really the transformative applications. So I do think that there are going to be some AI use cases that are going to go away, but I do think that this is here to stay. And the other thing that's provided me some comfort too is I'm on the younger end of things, right? I've been in the workforce maybe 12 years, but I've been speaking with advisors and people that I trust who are retiring, who've spent 40, 50 years in the workforce. And what gave me the nudge to create my own business was speaking with someone like that who said, this is not just another thing. And she had been in the workforce 40 years and said, this is serious. This is new. By the way, cryptocurrency was not one of those that, that was more of a fad, right? And she's not the only one who said this. And so I really believe in speaking with people who have experience and they see the value of this too. And that's what gives me the confidence that this is here to stay.
Yeah. Ilan, as we wrap up our conversation today, was there anything that I didn't ask you today that you think is important for our audience to understand, whether it's about AI or any of the things that we've talked about?
Great question. One thing that's particularly exciting about AI that I want people to realize, especially if you are one of those skeptics and you're on the fence, different from other technology breakthroughs, Gen AI actually removes barriers to use it and to become more sophisticated. So when big data became a thing and people were using all kinds of fancy scripts to write code and do all this big data analysis, that was only available to a small number of people if you had certain skill sets, right? And what's exciting, and I think the same thing is true with the internet and creating websites and SEO, like all these things kind of moved things up the skill level and introduced barriers. This really breaks down barriers, and it actually makes some of those advancements that we've experienced over the last few decades available to folks who maybe don't speak that lingo. And so, for example, you can remember, Gen AI, it's computer based, right? So it's amazing at writing code. And so it can write code on your behalf and it can advise you on different statistical analyses that you might want to run. And let's say I don't know all the names of these analyses or how to even run them. I can just say, hey, I'm a developer and I have this list of 100 properties and I want to evaluate these kinds of things, or I want to look for some trends. What might I do to evaluate this? And the AI can advise you and can actually write some of that complex statistical analysis for you. And so I think it's just really exciting that this is removing barriers for folks. And I would just encourage folks to, if there's one takeaway, just know that this is a technology for everyone to use, and it's not as complicated or as mystical as people might seem. So I just encourage people to try it. And I'm always happy to chat with folks. I love learning about people's businesses and hearing about their challenges and what their day-to-day looks like. And I'm able to learn from them, and hopefully they're able to learn from me.
I agree with you 100%. I always say the biggest breakthrough was that the machines learned to speak human, right? That's what opened it up for everybody. Ilan, if somebody wants to connect with you, what's the best place to find you? What's your website? Do you hang out on social media? Tell us where we can find and connect with you.
Definitely. Yes. Please check out my site. It's rtb-ai.com. I have a link where you can book time directly on my calendar, either with a video call or a phone call. And I'm happy to chat. If anything on this conversation was interesting, or a lot of people have ideas that are on their minds and they're like, oh, I think AI might be able to do that. I love having those conversations and giving on how that could actually be implemented. So feel free to set up time with me. Always happy to chat. And then I am on LinkedIn. I try to post there on some of the latest things that I'm seeing, and feel free to connect with me that way too, or by email. I'm just Ilan, ILAN, at rtb-ai.com.
And I'll be sure to link all of that information in the show notes so you guys can very easily connect with Ilan. Ilan, thank you so very much for being on today's show. I really appreciate your time. It was a pleasure to get to know you a little bit more. And I am very personally excited about the future of home building and the role that AI will play in it to make us better, faster, stronger. So again, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and being here with me today.
Absolutely. This was fun. Thanks for having me, and I look forward to what's ahead.
Thanks. Talk to you soon.